Hi friends, welcome back to our channel. In today's video, I am super excited to share my absolute amazing visit to the Corning Glass Factory with my awesome friends. We had an absolute blast witnessing the magic unfold during a live show where they created a stunning glass elephant. Hope you will enjoy it too.
I'm going to make a little sculpture of an elephant this afternoon. I'm starting out with solid glass rods in my hands and a 4,000 degree flame in front of me. 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit, that's a high temperature. So to produce that kind of heat, my torch is burning natural gas, like you'd have for a gas stove. That by itself isn't really hot enough to melt glass though, very efficiently. And so we also add a lot of compressed oxygen to the flame. And I bet you've heard this before, oxygen is an accelerant for flame, right? It means it makes it burn hotter. So that's how we're getting that high temperature. It's a good thing too, because the glass I'm using, which is called borosilicate, melts at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Got a pretty high melting temperature compared to some other types of glass. But I do have a 4,000 degree flame, so I got plenty of heat to get the glass soft pretty quickly. So one of the other really useful things that the oxygen does in this situation is to push that heat away from me. It's very directional, that flame, meaning that there's just not that much heat coming off the sides of it. See how close I can put my hand to that? And that's not because my hands are super tough, it's because the heat is almost all going in that direction. Very little of it comes off the sides, and so that explains how I can work so close to the flame. It also means that I can be very specific about which parts of the glass get soft. The glass has to be directly in that flame to soften. This part that's next to the flame, it's hot, but not so hot that it gets soft, and so you'll see that the glass rod holds its shape while I'm melting the end of it. When you melt glass, it tends to form a round shape. And so each step of the way, we're starting with a round bit of glass, and we call it a gather. So right here, I'm gathering glass for one of the elephant's legs. I'm going to attach it and stretch it. Glass is very stretchy when it's at its melting temperature. And glass softens gradually, and so I can work with different parts of it at different temperatures, and they're going to behave in very different ways. And you can see a great example of that here. So this leg, you can see it's glowing, and I just attached it and stretched it out. When it's soft enough to do all that, it's pretty close to the melting temperature. So that's right around 3,000 degrees right now. The body of the elephant is all firmed up. It's nice and hard. We know it's hot though, right? Because I was melting that a minute ago. So it's well over 1,000 degrees right now, but at that temperature, this glass is not soft. And then there's the part that I'm holding. It's all the same piece of glass, but where I'm holding it, it's not soft, and it's also not hot. So I got at least 3 distinctly different areas of temperature there in that one piece of glass, each one serving its own purpose at any given moment. And I can very quickly and precisely soften and harden different parts as I go along. So that's how I can adjust the shape. And so speaking of adjusting shapes, sometimes people ask me questions like, how do you know how much glass to add? Or how do you get the legs to all match perfectly? And I don't, because I'm a human being like everybody else. I don't know how to do anything perfectly. So what I do know, and I can tell you about it, is that I'm estimating. Every step of the way I'm thinking, well, how much glass do I think I need for that part? And how long do I think I need to heat that to get it soft enough for what I'm going to do next? My estimates are pretty good because I have been doing this a long time, but what I really know is the elephant's got 4 legs. So 4 estimates, that means once the legs are attached, I'm pretty confident they're not going to match. So I'm assuming there will be some adjusting. And that's what I'm doing here. You can see I'm looking at it pretty carefully and looking to see how do the legs look together. You know, does it make a nice pose for the elephant? Do they all look like they belong on the same elephant? I'm touching down to the table to see where the feet meet the ground. So I can add some glass if I need to. I can take some away. I can bend a leg. This one leg is slightly tucked under, so I'm gonna just give it a little adjustment there. I can heat where it's attached to the body and give it a nudge, or stretch a leg or bend a leg. And so little by little, I'm gonna add a little bit more to that, just by making adjustments until you get everything lined up and the elephant can stand, and so the glass can look as beautiful as possible. All right, so now we've got 4 feet on the ground. There's the body and the tail, and then a big handle sticking out in the front. I need to melt the handle off. I need to hold the elephant while I do that. And the elephant is all nice and firm now, and it's hot, about 1,000 degrees still. So, I'm not gonna grab it with my fingers. Instead, I'm putting a temporary handle on the belly, and then that allows me to melt the handle off the front, and I will gather glass for the head at the same time. This is one of the things that I think is kind of neat about this process, is that the glass rod is the sculpting material. That's what I'm melting to shape the elephant. It is also the handle. It's also an application tool. Sometimes you'll see me using a glass rod almost like a paintbrush or almost like a spatula, moving the glass around. And the very same piece of glass can change its job description from one minute to the next. And so you will often see me either cleaning up or changing the shape of the end of a glass rod to get it ready for its next job. And so you see that I'm taking the handle off, but I'm also leaving behind the glass that I need for the head. I told you that the heat is going that way, but of course gravity is pulling the molten glass toward the table. You'll see a lot of movement as I'm shaping the elephant. Sometimes, like here, I'm turning the glass in the flame to get the heat placed where I want it. Now that head is very soft, you can see it's glowing, and that means it's moving, and that's why I'm rotating it, because I have it in the position that I want, but it's if I hold it still, it will droop. And so I keep turning and tilting and watching it for a few more seconds until I know that it's firmed up. And then as it starts firming up, I'm going to start getting the glass ready for the ears. You wouldn't really expect it, but I can sort of feel in the handle as that glass starts to firm up. So I'm watching it, but I'm also feeling it. When the glass is soft and you're rotating, you can feel it kind of wanting to move, right? To droop a little bit. And as it firms up, I can feel that it starts to want to just hold its position. Heat doesn't travel through glass very fast. I bet you guessed that already just watching this. That's a pretty short piece of glass right there, and the end of it is 3,000 degrees right now. But I don't look worried, do I? Because I know that the heat's moving through there so slowly that there's actually plenty of surface area right there between the hot glass and my hand for the heat to just keep escaping into the air before it gets to me. The heat will move into the air faster than it moves along the length of that glass rod. So even if I'm heating it for a long time, the part that I'm holding is going to stay room temperature. And I know that seems so surprising when you're not familiar with it, but it's actually a natural characteristic of glass. And you can see that that's what's allowing this process to work. It means with this particular glass shaping technique, I'm working really close up with molten glass. And so it lends itself to doing very careful detail work. It's my favorite way to work with glass because of that. All right, so we got some ears. I will be adjusting the ears in a minute, but we're going to wait for them to firm up a little bit first. And so while I'm waiting for the ears to cool a bit, I will add the trunk. One of the beautiful things about working with glass is there are many, many different techniques for shaping it. They will appeal to different people for different reasons. I've worked with glass almost 30 years, and so I've tried a bunch of different techniques. They're all really interesting, and none of them captured my heart the way that this one does. So this is the one I've really spent most of that time with. And to me, this is the ultimate way to work with glass because I'm holding the glass in my hands while I'm shaping it. And so there's really no limit to how much delicacy and fine-tuning I can do. Don't need a whole lot of space or a whole lot of equipment to do this. I don't need an assistant. That means I'm never going to be waiting for somebody else to show up before I can do my work. And I'm only burning fuel when I'm actually shaping the glass. So the sort of investment in equipment and fuel is more sort of directly linked to the work and not so much to having a big studio. When you see our furnace workers, they will talk about the fact that the furnace has to be burning 24 hours a day. That's a lot of gas or electricity, either one, depending on the furnace, to be spending when you're not actually shaping the glass. But you can't turn off a furnace full of molten glass because as the glass cools and hardens, it shrinks and it will break apart the inside of the furnace. So you only ever turn your furnace off when you're getting ready to empty it or repair it. So in terms of being an individual studio artist, this is a technique that makes a lot of sense to me because it's manageable as an individual, and also because it's my favorite, because I like to be able to work so close to the glass. But when you see our furnace workers, or if you watch the Netflix series called Blown Away, you'll notice they all think that's the ultimate way to work with glass because it's their favorite. And then there are a bunch of other techniques too that people are equally passionate about it. There is a wide world of interesting art going on in glass these days. Just adding a little chin here. Now there's two types of connections when you work with hot glass. One is called a hot seal. If you look at where the legs are attached, that's a nice example of a hot seal because you saw me add glass for each of those legs. But when you look at where they're connected, you can see right through the glass, no seams there, because I heated until I saw the seams dissolve. That's how I know it's a hot seal, and a hot seal is permanent because those parts have become one piece. So that elephant is all one nice stable piece of glass right now. But look at where the handle is attached. Can you see that looks a little different? There's a shadow between the handle and the belly, and it looks kind of like it's just tacked on. Because it is. So that's called a cold seal. Remember I said glass softens gradually. So along about 1500 degrees or so, the glass will be sticky, but it's not flowing. And if I just stick that on there when it's not flowing, that's called a cold seal. And I'll show you why it's really important to avoid accidental cold seals in your sculpture, because they're really, really fragile. So you don't want any of the parts breaking off. That's why it's important to learn how to make a really dependable hot seal. But the cold seal is pretty useful for that temporary attachment because it does come off so easily. It leaves a little rough spot, so I was just smoothing that out. And then that is our little elephant.
Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy and please subscribe.